So hello everyone, welcome to the Microsoft Cybersecurity Strategy session in the Microsoft Online Tech Forum. My name is Fernando Cima. I'm the Managing Architect of Microsoft Cybersecurity Consulting Services team in Asia. Speaking for you today from Singapore. I'm very happy to have you attending our session today. I hope it's very interactive. We have your comments in the chat window. And what we're going to be talking today about is the Microsoft Cybersecurity Strategy. Our agenda for today is we're going to start by looking to the different trends that are transforming cybersecurity in the world today. So trends like the cloud, the recent trends around, for instance, working from home and collaborating remotely, and see what the challenges that this new world presents over the traditional approach for cybersecurity. Then we're going to be talking about the Microsoft unique approach on how we can address these challenges using cloud, using AI, the power of a threat intelligence, to enable organizations to provide seamless access and productivity to its employees, to enable the digital transformation of their business while keeping the threat of managing the threat of cybersecurity attacks. And we're going to be entering to four areas where Microsoft is investing and Microsoft is using to build this strategy. We're going to be talking about identities, which is the key point in the new world where perimeters, network perimeters are no longer hold. Talking about threat protection, the ability for us to quickly detect and respond to attacks when they happen, and we know they are going to happen. So the name of the game today a lot is about how quickly and how efficient you are able to detect and respond to those incidents. One of the challenges we're going to be also covering today is about how we protect information, particularly information in your mobile device, information that are being exchanged across different businesses, are being shared, how you can collaborate with the assurance that your data, your business information is protected. And then as we move in towards the cloud, we're going to talk a little bit about what's the Microsoft approach for securing your data, securing your applications, your assets in the Microsoft cloud or even in different clouds. Okay. So let's start today by looking to the trends and the transformation that we're seeing in the world. So one of the things that we're seeing is that as businesses are embracing digital transformation, more and more data and IT and information is relevant to their business. And we are seeing the changes, for instance, now recently in remote work and remote collaboration. So this increases a lot the risk that cyber criminals and cyber threats represent to the business. Okay? If everyone is relying on IT becoming even more critical part of the business. Any threat that can compromise your IT, your online data, becomes a threat directly to the business. What we're seeing also is that the conventional security tools have not been holding in terms of addressing this new type of environment and new type of threats. We're seeing that the on-premises tools, the traditional approach on network perimeter, rely on network perimeter, they don't hold because they lack the visibility, they lack the automation, and they lack the ability to protect digital assets that are no longer inside your network, but they are now in the mobile devices, are now in different clouds that the organizations are using. The other challenge we've seen is the lack of security professionals and the shortage of talent in terms of coping the increasing demand of having professionals to work with inside organizations to address those threats. There's an estimation from ISC Square, a professional organization, that we lack about 3 million professionals in cybersecurity around the world today. Okay, so we're not being able to cope the demand. And when I talk to CISOs across the region, pretty much every one of them tells me that one of the most scarce resources they have is people. Okay, so how do we having this while we have an increased amount of data that we need to analyze, an increasing amount of security incidents. So in many cases, the SOC inside this organization is limited by the number of people that are available. Okay. And on top of all of that, we're seeing an increasing amount of regulations that organizations need to comply, and the cost of compliance is increasing. Okay. So keeping up is not easy, and regulations, you cannot be compliant without first being secure. Before or in the beginning of every compliance requirement, there's a need for security in there. So how do we address those challenges? Okay. To show you here the new land. So what I'm showing here is the new landscape, the new IT landscape that we're seeing. The IT landscape today is very much different from what it was 5 or 10 years ago, before the mobile devices really became the norm, before the amount of collaboration between business online began to explode, and the decreasing adoption of cloud. Okay. So all of this really pose a challenge into the traditional way of doing security. So by traditional way, I'm referring to what we call the castle model, where organizations structure their security architecture around building the perimeter, around the network, and assuming that the data inside, the applications inside that perimeter are secure, and really enforcing strong measures on that perimeter. So we could not access data from outside the network. You had firewalls, VPNs, and all of this. But the complexity, however, of the existing environment make that approach not scalable. That make approach essentially becoming a blocker from the digital transformation, from the business adopting the technology. Okay? So we need to have a new approach. We cannot continue doing IT security the way we were doing 5 years ago or 10 years ago, with the type of environment, the business environment, the technology landscape, and the type of user needs that we have today. So luckily, there is a way forward. And I like the quote here that comes from Forrester, that when they say that the future of the cybersecurity is in the cloud. So the cloud provides us the computing power, the ability to process data, the network reach, and the automation and the machine learning, the AI, the ability to process a huge amount of data, to combine all that telemetry with threat intelligence coming from different sources, and apply machine learning models to be able to protect users and data wherever they are, and integrate with different types of applications, different types of clouds, and giving you also the visibility on the threats that you have and the ability to respond more quickly. Okay. One of the transitions we are seeing in security today is a transition to what we call a zero trust security model. In that model, we don't rely on the network perimeter anymore to build our security controls. So essentially, we are assuming that your data, your users, your applications are could be essentially anywhere. And we are moving towards, and zero trust move towards a model where we explicitly verify every access that between your users, your apps, and your data. Okay, so we don't trust necessarily the network, the perimeter anymore. Okay. By using the cloud, we enable organizations to move towards that paradigm, to move towards that model, and that is central into the Microsoft approach to security that we are going to be seeing today, and we're going to be seeing across this event. So what's Microsoft, when you say Microsoft has a unique approach, so what's the Microsoft approach to cybersecurity in the world today? So we base our approach across three pillars, if you will. The first one is we build experience that works across the platform. So one of the things that we're seeing is that security cannot be a blocker, or security cannot be a burden, if you will, across the users. So users require a seamless work experience. So Microsoft is committed to deliver built-in protection. So across all our platforms, being Microsoft 365, being Microsoft Azure, that simply work and provide a very simplified experience for the end users. So we want, in the end, we want everyone to get their job done, regardless of where, from where they work, or which tools, which devices they use. The second pillar of our approach, principle of our approach, is the heavy use of automation and artificial intelligence. Okay. We were talking just a few minutes ago about the shortage of people, of talent, in organizations to deal with all the different alerts and cybersecurity controls. Okay, so Microsoft is using AI and using the cloud, the power of the cloud and the threat intelligence that we have to process data, process all these alerts, all the information in organization, cut the noise, automate the repetitive tasks, and make sure that your cybersecurity people are focused on what really matters. And at the same time, provide organizations the ability to quickly detect and respond to attacks. The third pillar in our approach is that we want security to be integrated across devices, across applications, across data. So you don't need to build in on top security on what you're doing. We believe that security should be an integral part of every product, of every platform that Microsoft provides. Okay? So when you get a Windows device, your security controls are already a part of the Windows platform. As you adopt Microsoft 365 for collaboration, productivity, Microsoft 365 as a platform provides the controls to protect information, protect identities there, and same for Microsoft Azure. Okay, so let's move into, given the overview, let's see how we apply those three pillars, these three principles into the technology, into different areas. So Microsoft is focused its security investments into 4 broad areas, which is the one that we're going to be exploring now until the end of this session. So the first one, and perhaps the most important one, is identity access management. We know that the vast majority of security breaches that happen today, they begin with compromised passwords, with what we call credential theft. It's usually because that's usually the weakest link across any security strategy, and that's where it is a fundamental pillar for us to enable a security architecture, a security approach. We also want to invest a lot in threat protection, and that's where we use technology to go into the high volume of data and alerts that we have today, so we can prioritize and automate the response. The third pillar is on information protection, and then we know our customers tell us about all the challenge they have in terms of protecting information that today is essentially shared across different employees, different business units, or different organizations. So how we make sure that sensitive data is identified and protected regardless of where it lives or to where it travels. And that's where there's a lot of pressure on compliance, so we can also demonstrate that data is protected to auditors and to regulators. And the fourth area of investment is cloud. So as we see organizations move more of their workloads to the cloud, it's very important to protect those resources. And we know it's not a single cloud world. So regardless of the cloud that you're using, being Azure or AWS or Ali Cloud or Salesforce, Slack, you name it, Microsoft built a very comprehensive security to protect resources. So when we see cloud security, Microsoft, not only the Microsoft cloud itself, but resources that can be on different clouds, but part of the same security architecture. Okay. So let's start with identity and access management. And the reason identity is so important is because essentially, as we're going to see, identity is the new control plane. Identity is the glue, if you will, that connects users to applications, to data, and to the resource that they need to be productive. Okay. So Microsoft offers a very comprehensive identity and access management platform using our Azure Active Directory identity service. Okay. So we Azure Active Directory, we focus on how we can connect your workforce, connect your employees, your users to any application that exists, be on the premises, be on the cloud. And while we do that, we are able to enforce strong authentication, enforce conditional access policies, and provide continuous validation for every access request. So make sure that all the right users have access to the right resources. We know that one of the trends we're seeing is organizations reaching out more to their users, enable more collaboration between business partners. So identities cannot exist in a silo. We need to be able to enable scenarios like B2B or B2C as well. And integrate identity into our applications, so applications can use capabilities like single sign-on, like biometrics. So identities can be way more strong in the way how they provide access to their resources, regardless of which application platform you're using. So let's start by, and if there's one message that I'll emphasize here when we talk about identity, is that identity is what we call the new control plane. So we're moving towards a world where network perimeter was the perimeter, and you assume that users have access to the applications because they are inside the network. And we're moving towards a model where identity is the perimeter. So whenever someone wants access to any resource, regardless of whether it's inside the network, outside the network, in a cloud provider, in a partner application, identity is the thing that will enable that user to have access to that resource. So it's the glue, as I said, between users and the service, the data, the applications that they need to have access to. So having a strong identity is fundamental to provide assurance in this new world. Okay. And of course, an identity is only as valuable as the ability for the applications to consume that identity. So part of the investment you're doing is to make sure that applications can more easily can receive strong identity coming from Azure Active Directory and enable users to connect to their application by using those credentials. The other key feature that we implemented in Azure Active Directory is the ability to use what we call conditional access. Conditional access is a policy engine that enables you to use not only the credential itself, not only the password or the multi-factor, the credential itself to validate the user, but be able to take in consideration which type of user we are talking about here, from where the user, what's the location, from where the user is connecting from, the type of device that the user is accessing. Is this a managed device? Is this a BIOD device? Is this a device that I've seen before? Or maybe it's a compromised device or a device that's not compliant. To factor in the type of application that the user is connecting from. And realizing the fact that some applications may require a much higher level of assurance, and some applications, they are less critical. You may relax some of the level of assurance you want to have. And perhaps more important, the ability to use a risk-based evaluation. So combine the threat intelligence that we have with the historical data and the previous behavior of that user or the overall users of the organization, how that organization as a whole behave typically, and calculate, okay, is this a risk device logon or not? And that's a principle that you've seen today already in the consumer space. So sometimes when you're using a consumer social network application, for instance, you may receive a notification, or you may see that platform asking you to change your password, perhaps, or to do a multi-factor authentication. So we are bringing the same. We have the same now for corporate identities. So based on the level of risk and based on the type of device, location, behavior of the user, we may flag that authentication as a high risk, medium risk, or low risk access, and allow you to take actions, for instance, like requiring a multi-factor authentication, or requiring a password change, for instance, or notifying the user, says, hey, this is something that we think, can you confirm that this was really you? Or outright block access. So conditional access is a very, very powerful feature that's embedded into Azure Active Directory, and that gives you the power to enforce what we call the core principle of zero trust, which is never trust, always verify. So at every single time that a user is connecting to an application, regardless which user, which application, that request passes through the conditional access policy engine and allows you to verify the trust and take actions based on those signals. So again, it's a very, very powerful feature that's embedded into this new type of what we call modern identity that Azure Active Directory provides. The second area is on what we call threat protection, which is the ability to quickly detect and protect against attacks. And we are talking here about 3 areas of investment. The ability to detect the attacks, and that uses the cloud system ecosystem that we have, the ability to process signal across large volumes of data and use machine learning to do that. And the ability to empower what we call empower defenders, which is to automate and enable much quicker response whenever we detect a particular threat. So the Microsoft approach is to infuse our threat protection engines across every single part of the ecosystem. So we're talking about reading telemetry from Active Directory on premises, from Azure Active Directory, so all the identity intelligence that we get, so we know who is logging from where, from which device, and build the behavior model for that particular user, for that particular organization. Talk about collecting telemetry from endpoints using Microsoft Defender ATP, that endpoint being Mac or Windows or Linux, and analyze the behavior of those systems. Okay. Same thing in terms of applications. We're looking to, as you use Microsoft 365, or when your users are connecting to different cloud services over the internet, how we can collect that data, who is doing what in different services, and also build that behavior model and identify potential violations of policy or potential threats. Same thing for the data. As you receive emails, you receive attachments over the internet, how we can inspect that data and identify threats. And when it comes to infrastructure, our ability to monitor servers, monitor cloud platforms. All these sorts of data feed into our threat protection platform. And you can see in the slide some of the numbers of the amazing scale of what the cloud provides, in ability to process all this information, process all these different activities, and able to detect threats, even threats that were not previously identified before, what we should call zero-day attacks. So that's in addition so what we're seeing is, on one side we have the Microsoft Threat Protection platform that collects all this data and apply our machine learning or threat intelligence to detect threats. On the other side is our ability to not only rely on the Microsoft Threat Protection platform for that, but integrate with all other different types of sources of security telemetry and information and events, being different clouds like AWS and GCP, being partner solutions, so most of the firewall vendors, endpoint protection vendors, reading information from IoT platforms, as well as virtual machines, network devices, and applications, and feed that into our Azure Sentinel service, which is our cloud-based security information event management. So Sentinel enables you to build this giant data lake, if you will, of security information coming from Microsoft platforms, coming from third parties platforms, and use then the power of Azure to process those events, detect threats, investigate threats. So the ability for your SOC to have all the data that it needs to investigate in a single location, and then automate the execution of actions. Okay, so Sentinel can play an amazing role in collecting and process all the data and enable you to build a much more intelligent and much more efficient security operations center. Okay. And that is the core of what we want to achieve with threat protection. We should empower our SOC professionals, empower our defenders. On one side with AI to reduce the number of alerts, reduce what we call alert fatigue, the noise that we're seeing, really enable you to focus on what really matters. And we know that threats are becoming way more complex today. We're seeing adversaries moving from on-premises to one cloud to another cloud, being compromising mobile devices, cooperated on device. That requires an amazing ability to correlate signals that being collected from different platforms, and that's what Sentinel can provide on that side. On the other side, it's about automation. It's about the time to response, to reduce that time to response, to cope from the threat of automated attacks, for instance, right? And at the same time, reducing the amount of effort required from your team. So that's the model that Microsoft's working on, okay? Using threat protection, using Sentinel in our threat protection area. The third area Microsoft is focused our investments is on protecting information. So our goal here is to enable you to have an integrated set of solutions that help protect your sensitive information, regardless of where it lives or where it travels. So we want to enable you to, and again, we leverage our AI capabilities or cloud capabilities to identify and classify your data, to sort through all the data that you have and identify what is really sensitive, what's most important to your organization. And then apply protection policies that will protect information regardless of which device it's being used it's residing, regardless of which cloud service it is. So wherever the information travels to, it remains protected. And we understand the different compliance requirements that you have. So we want you to be able to monitor how this information is used and remediate actions, like for instance, revoking access to information if the data is being used in a non-compliant way or in an unauthorized way. The last pillar, this area of investment for Microsoft as part of our strategy, is on cloud security. So here, and we have let's call it threefold approach to cloud security. So the first one is to give visibility on protection across the cloud. So we're investing in features like Secure Score that tells you how secure, what's the level of controls and protection we have in the cloud, and provide guidance in terms of what you should be doing to protect that cloud. At the same time, we want developers to be able to develop applications on the cloud in a secure way. Particularly developers who are moving towards a DevOps release model on how we can automate the release cycle of those applications, how we can automate the security controls in those release pipelines, so something we call DevSecOps. And third, the ability for you to monitor how your users are using cloud applications, okay? And detect and control something we call shadow IT, which is the use of unsanctioned applications by the organization. So that's where Microsoft invests in our cloud access security broker called Microsoft Cloud App Security. So let's just look into in terms of giving you visibility on how secure your cloud is. And that's where Microsoft Azure Security Center plays a big role. So Azure Security Center provides the ability to collect information from the Azure cloud platform itself, being all the different services that Azure provides, as well as when it comes into compute, to get information from virtual machines that are running not only on Azure, but in other cloud platforms as well as on-prem. And by collecting that data, Azure Security Center can continuously monitor how you're using the cloud, not only from a security perspective, but also from a compliance perspective. So things like data sovereignty, for instance, things like even appropriate tagging of cloud resources, and then measure your compliance, the level of compliance you have in your Azure environments. So one of the things we can do today, for instance, is look into a standard like ISO 27001, and say, okay, how compliant you are based on information that we're collecting from the cloud, and provide recommendations and best practices on how you can remediate that. Okay? So Azure Security Center provides you a level of visibility on your cloud security that you would never have, for instance, inside on premises. So that's just to wrap up our session today. And again, we welcome any questions, any feedbacks you may have on our chat window. In the end, Microsoft wants to, we take our responsibility to create a world that's more secure. As we're driving digital transformation across your organization, we have a responsibility to ensure that this is not disrupted by different cyber threats. Thank you again very much today for our session, and hope to talk to you anytime soon again. Thank you very much.